This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, now streaming only on Netflix.
Hey. Do you have an idea for a podcast but don't know where to start? Or do you have an already existing podcast that you want to take to the next level? Well, check out WeKnowPodcasting.com. From concept development to theme music to editing to logos, WeKnowPodcasting.com is a one-stop shop for all things pod. Don't hesitate to hit us up. We're very nice.
We're here to entertain you. We'll sing your songs for good times, the best times. You can't go wrong. We'll two-step, a new step. It won't be long. When the Dixielands are playing, soon you'll be swaying. So come on, sing along.
Bonjour and welcome to another podcast episode of Before My Time. I am your host, Gelsey Laurie, and I'm here to talk about things I am obsessed with that happened, well, before my time. This episode, I am, as always, joined by my lovely producer, Matt Kelly, and we are going to talk about neo-futurism. That is the idea of the future, be it styles, predictions, whatever, back in the 50s and 60s. So that's right, like the Jetsons. Before we get into this, I just, on the note of the Jetsons, want to let you guys know that the Jetsons takes place in 2062, and George Jetson is 40 years old. That means that right now, George's parents are getting lucky. Actually, to be exact, August 27th. So that means that last week, his parents got nasty and made a little baby George Jetson. So we're welcoming you into this world, George. Can't wait. And on that note, let's get into the future in the past.
Flying life in the modern kitchen. This new sink has a full rounded beauty, and in the self-opening container, all evidence of work is quickly hidden. Equally convenient are cooking utensils. Now here's a neatly designed KitchenAid, a compact double boiler. Filling it is easy indeed. Why didn't someone think of this before?
When we first came up with the idea for this show, you sent me a list of topics that you really wanted to cover. And it's funny because in my brain, it was just like, we'll talk about like the Rolling Stones or, you know, like Some Like It Hot, which has already been covered or stuff like that. And then you had like the aesthetic choices of decades. And that was something that I didn't even imagine as a topic.
Oh, it's a topic.
I'm very like media centric. So like, I want you to explain the way that, because I feel like any attempt that I make on saying this will not be proper. So what are we sitting here to talk about today?
Okay, today, well, I can use like the fancy official lingo, and retro-futurism.
Okay.
Is, I'm going to title it, and that is the official word, retro-futurism, but I like to call it the idea of the future back in time, or like, you know, in the 50s when we're like, space.
Yeah, I think I explained it to someone as like the concept of the future as seen by the 50s.
Like, yes, that's a great Back to the Future, if you will. Oh.
Yeah, like just this very like, golly gee, we're going to have a vacuum that can vacuum the ceiling. Like
exactly. It's
like,
very much much the house of the future. If you walk into the kitchen, the wife no longer has to turn the cake batter. She just presses this button, and 10 minutes later, a cake comes out. Like, it's very much that. I'm obsessed with it.
I think that there is a very our friendship developed very much on like a thin line of weird common interests. 50s sci-fi and Disney, I think, go hand in hand with this topic that we're talking about.
They do, actually. I mean, everything you research on retrofuturism, futurism, Googie architect, which is one of my favorite, we'll get into that, but I was like, what is this called? Googie? Oh, I'm for it. I'm here for it. Most of the links off of whether you be a wiki page, this, that, also reference Tomorrowland and a lot of things that were the start of kind of the house of the future, which actually was an attraction in Tomorrowland. Walt Disney was really passionate about the world of tomorrow and our future lives. And so there was definitely a lot of inspiration and move forward with Disney.
And I think we were of that right age where, and I talked about this on the Disneyland episode, I believe, that I have these 3 clamshell VHS tapes from the mid 90s that were the like, hey, come and check out how great Disney World is type tapes. And even in those tapes, they have like all of that kind of original 1950s Tomorrowland stuff in it. And as a kid, you're still just kind of like, wow, I could have a robot dog. Like, you're still kind of pulled into like that Jetsons-y depiction of the future.
Totally. And I'm still waiting for my robot dog. Like, I'm waiting for my Sneaking the Jetsons. Like, every day, I'm like, we're a day closer to me getting Rosie. Like, yeah. I know I will have made it in my futuristic life when I have a fucking Rosie.
I mean, I think this is a very important distinction. Do you want just a robot maid, or
no, Rosie?
It needs to be that sassy, wise talking.
Yes. like it needs to look like her. She needs to have the little apron and hair doily. Yeah, no.
I love it. No, and I agree. Like, I think it's kind of depressing almost now because like 2021, our vision of the future is very achievable. Like, it's not like this outrageous predictions anymore.
It's because we're there though. It's exciting. I know what you mean. There's not that like almost fantasy of it where it's like one day, but like there's no way, it just seems so far off. But now it's like, I have friends that have, or people I knew that worked for SpaceX and Tesla and whatnot. And one guy told me, he was like, did he say in 5 years? He's like, there will be flying cars, but he's like, in 10 years, you will be able to have a flying Uber come get you. And I was like, no. He's like, yeah, no, I've seen the technology. Like, it exists. And I was like, what? This is so cool. Like, I get geeked out that we're there. And actually, according to predictions, there's a lot of things that they predicted would already have been here.
That's what makes me sad, is that we've passed a lot of the predicted dates. And now it's like some of the stuff is going to be here, but then like, what is the exciting stuff to look for? I feel like the stuff
flying cars. I just said we might have flying cars.
No, like for our kids. I love the idea that as kids of the 90s, we were still imagining the 50s version of the future. And now we were. And now it's like, well, I mean, the 2001 version of the future is like the 2001 we're living in is already like the 2015 vision of the future. And now all that we have, like now all of our future predictions in the society are like pure dystopian wasteland.
I was just about to go into dystopian future and how, I was like, unfortunately, I feel like it's gone into a dystopian. I think right now we're in an era where that is more the mainstream future because now people are trying to bring awareness to certain topics of being like, great, we're in that future that they dreamed of, maybe not visually, aesthetically pleasing, in my opinion, future of the 50s, but technology-wise and some, advancement we've made. But now we have had it long enough and see where it's going, where we go, oh shit, we're like killing the planet or, And so now like the thing to do is kind of scare us to get us to like actually realize what's going on and being like, if we keep going, we're gonna maybe in the near future we will come into a new utopian view of the future. But dude, we're going to space. We are like, in our lifetime, we will have the opportunity to be like, I'm gonna buy a ticket to space and go to the moon. Hell yeah.
Let me ask you a question, because I think that I would say no to that ticket. So you
Sign
would
me up.
absolutely okay.
Absolutely. Sign me up. Like, as long as they're like, we know our technology is good enough that you're not going to like blow up during takeoff and like,
Yeah.
I mean, anything can happen. Planes are still somewhat dangerous. Like,
That's what I mean. It took a long time for me to get to the comfort level of an airplane. And even still, every time I board it, there is that moment where you're like, all right, let's hope that this goes well, that there's no problem.
But you get in your car every day. Like, statistically, the chances of you getting into a car, I know. I'm lucky that I've been on a plane since I think I was 6 weeks old, and my parents were like, time to get on a plane. And so it's just, I've always known it. And I guess that part of me has just always trusted it.
But I guess the flip side of that is like, when I'm getting on a plane, it's almost, well, except for when you're coming home. In general, when you're getting on a plane, it's because I'm going to a place that's going to make me happy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to go to California. I don't know. I don't know if the moon is going to provide me the same. I mean, if they put a Disney World on the moon, that's a whole different thing.
But to be able to just go, I really want to go to the space station. Like, I just want to go up to the space station and like chill for a couple of days and eat like capsule food and be like, that was terrible, and then float around. But I want to be able to look back out of a little portal window and see Earth. Like, I think that would be the most awe-striking, surreal. I think it would be more emotional than we would think. Like, I've thought about it.
I mean, I guess I could see the good in this too. We're getting so off the topic already, but that's great.
I got excited about space. I love space.
Do you think having the ability, because I think you're right. I think that like looking through that porthole and seeing the Earth down there, do you think if it was readily accessible for people to go into space, a lot of the people who don't care about trying to preserve the Earth would have a second opinion after seeing it from that perspective?
Maybe
high up, you're like, oh, I think a lot of the problems that we face in the world, it's not necessarily an issue of like evil people and good people, but it's like people who can see within the restraints of their own existence, and people who are just like hyper focused on like, well, this is the world that I have, and this is like what I have been able to see, and that's all that matters. And like based on the information that I've been able to compute from like never leaving my small town, everything's great. I don't know why people are complaining. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a good mix, and we can definitely get in on a, I don't know, different topic, how we pull that in. But, you know, it's that the more of the world you see, the more you appreciate, in my humble, well-traveled opinion. You do. I'll little side antidote. Like, I have traveled a lot, and I've found that there was definitely a culture in the US that was like, you know, America's the worst and Sweden has a better healthcare policy and this, that. And I'm not saying they're not right, or maybe there's things that we could all learn from different cultures. But normally those people, I'm like, have you ever been outside the US?
Yeah.
The majority of them say no. And I'm like, you don't know how actually great we have it here. Like, you don't know how glorious a Target is and the one-stop shop convenience, which some might be like, it's terrible. And I'm like, go half a year without that and then talk, you know, it's just like, again, that perspective, I guess, which, oh my God, I was in Europe for like 6 months and all I wanted to do was go eat a cheeseburger. And I'm not even a big burger person. Cheeseburger and go to Target.
Yeah.
Nothing more American than that. I was like, I need Target.
I can categorically tell you that since I quit my job and like have been really penny pinching every little decision, one of the small joys in my life is going to Target, not even buying anything, but just walking around and looking at stuff.
That's impossible in my world. Every time I walk out, I'm like, damn it, why do I have a bag? But it's free entertainment. But
yeah. It's the small joys of just like, oh, this is how I'm going to get my walk.
It is. It's great.
How about you describe to us a little, like, I think I have I would say I'm like 90% sure when you say retro-futuristic.
So stylistically speaking and architecturally speaking, most will know it as mid-century modern is the kind of very, there's a couple different ages that are the same thing, different, but crossed over. So we have Retro-Futurism. Ray gun Gothic is, I never knew that was how they described that.
I love that.
I love ray gun. I was like, I'm obsessed. I need a ray gun Gothic house, which I do. So that's going to be a little more of kind of your zany sci-fi architectural looks. A lot of wide angles, curved edges, single pillar / column holding up an entire top structure look, if you will. And then the Googie architect, which is basically kind of a mid-century modern. So it's much more of a minimalist look, but it's very influenced by the space age and the atomic age. And the atomic age was another thing that kind of crossed over. And it's going to give you a lot of those, literally some structures and buildings or artwork look like an atom. you kind of see the circles and or an atomic burst, it was very influenced by, well, the time, clearly, because we're just getting out of the Cold War and the atomic bomb had been created. And so there was definitely very interesting, a mega fear around that time. I mean, my dad talks about, they would have like drills at school, and he was raised, a kid in the 50s, and they would have drills at school about like, oh, if there's a bomb that drops, this is what we do. And then he remembers walking to school and like someone building a bomb shelter and preparing it. It's like, I couldn't imagine being a kid walking by and just to that point, and people are preparing enough that like, this could happen. Duh.
I guess if you think about it in that sense of this time of fear and this time of concern about stuff, why in that same time period and into the early 70s with stuff like Star Trek have this idea of a utopian future, like where everything is handled for you and there's no worries and there's no cares. And
I do. It's a really interesting time because you do have these like dual themes going on at the same time, and there's the fear, and you see it a lot in like we said, the dystopian future was where sci-fi was going. And, sci-fi films of the 50s, which again, this will have to be its own episode because that's like a shitload to dive into and awesome. But the sci-fi films, be it their monsters, aliens, themselves, technology, the themes kind of were all feeding off the anxieties of the Cold War and the threat of an atomic war. And a lot of the monsters were created by atomic waste, or, it's the fear of technology moving forward, and they're able to do things that, some people maybe ethically think humans shouldn't, or travel to other planets and find this, or what robots are going to do, or, you travel to the future and we're ruled by apes, or, and they kind of did, I think, feed off of, and it was something to say about, there was a lot of films that's kind of the undertone of like, here's a political piece, but it's in a sci-fi movie, and they kind of went that way. But then I think on the other side, we have the space race. NASA gets created in 1958. And what is more excited than actually seeing things on TV that are like, this is the first time X has happened. This is the first time a launch has happened. And there was also kind of that stress of it being a race. We were up against trying to beat the Russians, getting to space. And it kind of brought, I think, a camaraderie and oddly a patriotism of like, the US, and kind of brought us together. Like, we're going to be the best and we're going to get to space. And we get that technology. And then it's kind of this, here's what we can expect from the future. And we still were socially in a very, this is how the family Mad Men era, husband goes to work and the wife stays at home. And everything was this Stepford perfect, trying to create the perfect family and household. So it's like a marriage of those two is where that like utopia of the future came.
It's interesting because you're talking about the sci-fi, and I'm realizing, and this is all coming in real time, so it's not a perfect an example or analogy, but I think cinematically a lot of the time the 50s films that we think of, like the Deadly Mantis and them and stuff like that, at the end of those movies the savior is war. It's like the military comes in and solves the problem. But then on television, you're having stuff like Outer Limits and The Twilight Zone, where really the message of a lot of those shows is like human love and compassion and empathy is the only thing that's going to like save us.
Or they just end dark and doomed
from these terrible futures. You know what I mean? Like it's like no one can protect you but like a complete change in society's perceptions.
Absolutely.
And then I think why I'm bringing these two different pieces up is that I do think that the retro-futurism aesthetic is like somewhere in the middle, where it's like, God bless America and its armies protecting the borders, and we all love each other now. And now look at our fashion that hasn't changed since 1955 here in 2024.
That's what I love, is that like, speaking of the fashion, and it's like, the idea of the future, it's still so dramatically set in the social realm of the 50s. And they might have like a more, her dress is silver and a little shorter, and they start bringing in go-go boots, which were very inspired by the space movement. And that gets more into the 60s, but it's still, the hairdos are very bouffant, and you have a 50s style alien dress or robot dress. And I'm just obsessed with it. Like I wish that's how our future looks, but they didn't, they could predict flying cars and video face chatting, which is awesome that we are there and we have that. But, they still don't put women in pants or like, it's just, I love it. It's like, I mean, it's kind of like, oh God, but it just really shows even how futuristic something could be. It's so dated.
It's almost as if they were like, well, we've got to figure out a way to improve the telephone, but fashion we have absolutely nailed. This is forever right here.
Oh yeah, they're like women will, and even our roles in society, it was still extremely, I remember seeing this old like cartoon, it might've been the early 60s, maybe late 50s, that was like this is what the future is going to look like. And it kind of had the narration of what's going to go on, and had a car that goes up and splits into two. So it was like, the car goes up, the husband splits on so he can go, start his busy day at work while the mother and child go off shopping. And she gets home just in time to get the pot roast. But don't worry, she doesn't actually have to tend to it all day. Our robot's been working on it, but mom will have dinner on table just in time for her husband to come home. And she's still just, her free time is out shopping while the husband goes to work. And she still needs to make sure dinner's on the table for him when he gets home. Everyone still has the same roles of what they play. And it's, I
love those voiceovers though.
I just love them.
Because they go from like, they're one of two things, right? It's either the one that you just did, which is like, the newscaster at the start of Citizen Kane voice, or the other one is the voiceover that I will refer to as like the Goofy shorts.
TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right. New music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
Yeah.
Stuff like where they would do like these Disney Goofy shorts would be like, don't go in there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey kids, and it's kind of yes, I'm talking to you.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you doing cooped up in the house all day? I know it's raining out, but don't let that stop you.
Exactly.
And they get like transported. Oh, totally.
It's so good.
It's amazing. Like, we need to bring that back. And obviously, clearly, all of this started in the 50s with the atomic era. NASA gets started. And then you have, 1958 is NASA. The Jetsons come along in 1963. So now we're even bringing it into, you already said Outer Limits, Twilight Zone. We've got all the movies in the 50s. One of my favorites is Forbidden Planet, just plugging that. Robot Robbie. The Jetsons, though, come in 1963. And so now we're bringing it, into mainstream cartoons of main network of like, here's the family of the future that we all grow to love. And the Jetsons are the epitome of that. They have still George is going to work, dealing with his boss. That's a pain. Jane's out shopping. It's still very socially constricted.
It is. But you know what? It's such I think that there is something to be said about, as much as we're poking fun at the fact that they were just like, well, so the social norms and the fashion will never get better than it is right now in 1950s.
The fashion got worse.
In a weird way, if they attempted to design what they thought fashion would look like in 30 or 40 years, it would take away so much of what makes us love the retro-futurism
absolutely
aesthetic.
Absolutely. No, it's just perfect. I'm so happy with it. And I'm lucky enough to be in Southern California, where a lot of our architecture in LA, San Diego, we have a lot of this, I'm going to say it again, Googie architect and ray gun Gothic. It's all over. I don't think it's quite as apparent on the East Coast as it is the West Coast, just because we also are newer, didn't have as much already pre-established buildings. So a lot of still like expanding and building was in the 50s and 60s. I mean, my dad grew up in Venice Beach, and he remembers the freeways being built or starting construction. Like, damn. If you've ever been to LAX, the main, there's a restaurant in between the terminals that's kind of a propped up, almost looks like a big white spider, if you will, kind of. I mean, it's the epitome of that architecture, and it's just brilliant, and it's right at LAX. I mean, it's all over LA, but it's just great. And here's a fun little fact too. Okay, kind of going back, speaking of automobiles, not at all, just starting there. In 1956, or I should say, speaking of the freeways, 1956, the government passed the Interstate Highway Act. So that was when they were like, we're going to build highways connecting the entire country and going through. So now you're getting all these huge freeway developments and highways. And so families started spending more money on cars than they did before. And they started moving out of farming, agricultural jobs and lifestyles into a more, the fast paced up and going. So the designs of the cars started leaning more towards this new atomic space age, and they started resembling airplanes and rockets. And they put just a completely different emphasis on the design because also people were spending more money. We're in the space age. It's what everyone's into right now. And the car companies used to have exhibits at their car shows exhibiting the newest appliances for kitchens to try to entice the wives to come with their husbands to the car show. They're like, we need to get the women here. What can we do? Here's the newest fridge and stove. And she's like, oh, honey,
insulting.
Look. I know, it's so insulting. And so they used to so that was a very stereotypical thing, was to have these new exhibits.
That's so misguided.
I know. But after World War II, the spending on household furnishings and appliances rose 240%. So after the war, people were very much looking for that American dream. I mean, that's what everyone knows in the 50s. And they fed into it and they're like, we got it.
I am willing to bet that you'll see something similar. I think we're going to see another big bump in that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it may have already even happened, but after definitely in the next year after the pandemic. You know what I mean? Like, I think that people are going to be so sick of the house that they've been trapped in.
Oh yeah, it's already starting. People are, it's like, I forget if they've numbered the house renovation projects. I mean, people were doing that during the pandemic because it was, I'll paint that cabinet one day. Now the one day's here and we have nothing to do. And people are like, shit, I guess it's time to paint this shit. Or so everyone was doing all these house projects, but now, there definitely has been a huge rise. And the housing market right now is insane.
It's chaos.
But it's like you said, I mean, everyone just spent over a year stuck in their house. And now they're like, wow, I want to spend more time here. Either they feel like they're going to be spending more time, so they want to put the money into it, or they realize, what? People are definitely putting money into their homes.
But I think tying it to not so much I've been stuck in my home, but more with World War II, I think it was this forced return to normalcy. We've just had this very awkward couple of years where the husband or the kids weren't at home. They were off in Europe. They were fighting this war, and now they're back home. So it's let's just do whatever feels the most normal to us.
Yeah, and create again the American dream, and the picture perfect family started coming in to, and then I think it definitely became a keeping up with the Joneses type culture, which we're in it worse now. Thank you, Instagram. Yeah. And was the marketing in the 50s was genius, and they fed into that, and they fed into the space age, and a lot of that kind of futuristic, the kitchen of tomorrow, the house of tomorrow. Are you going to be a woman of the future? They really fed into that with marketing to sell whatever products they had now. But it is fun. There are some predictions of what technology they thought would be here now. They already thought, I know Walt Disney thought by 1986, I don't know why 86 is the year, but he thought we would be doing routine trips to the moon.
Little off there.
Just a bit. But in Tomorrowland, there was a huge rocket when the park first opened. I think I said this on our Disney episode, but it had TWA because they were the sponsor, and it kind of represented by 86 that'll just be normal. And I was like, damn, not quite. But solar power cars were predicted, and these all have awesome little illustrations of what they look like. And this is where these are all actual articles from a magazine. They're all Closer Than We Think, but the artwork of what the cars look like and what the highways, it has that very retro-futurism, ray gun gothic, sharp edge. It's just, I'm obsessed with the aesthetic. It's so awesome. Glass domed houses to protect your houses from the elements. So just put a big glass dome over your home.
Yeah, that can't go badly.
Supersized crops. Yeah, which, I mean, someone could be like, well, our crops are bigger now than they should be, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not going to get into that. It's not. Robot warehouses.
We're getting real close to that.
Amazon's already got, but this picture's pretty dope. These robots are one's flying, and they just... I'm like, well, if it looked like that, maybe people would be for it.
Yeah, their optimism is the best part of that time period.
It's so great. Push button education. So all the desks would be computers to an extent. And
again, it's almost there. Like,
it's almost
especially
there.
weirdly with the pandemic, like the schools had to give every single kid a laptop so that they had an ability to participate in class. So it's like, you're not that far off.
Shit, talk about the pandemic. I think everyone went through push button education this year. Again, so grateful I do not have kids through this pandemic. Like to all you mothers and fathers out there.
Yeah, God bless you.
God bless you for this past year, because, oh my gosh, I could barely be locked in the house with myself. Okay, here's a fun one. We thought there would be jetpack mailmen. Like, why does that need to be there? Just like, bye.
I mean, again, I guess we're almost there with like the drone delivery stuff now.
Yeah, that's exciting too. Yeah. Ooh, okay, this one, we are accurate. Wristwatch TV was predicted, and I'm looking at a illustration of very late 50s, early 60s kind of city and a couple looking, and it literally looks like an iWatch. Like, it's, some things it's like, oh, yes, the technology's there, but they kind of illustrate it differently, or it literally looks like she has an iWatch on. This one's interesting, One World Job Market, and this illustration shows someone on a business call in Buenos Aires. He's an employer, and on the screen is a job seeker and family from Philadelphia. And there's a big colored TV screen, and they're doing a business deal. He's trying to hire him. And that is very accurate. I mean, we have Zoom, FaceTime, all these things. And so now, especially again, God, we should call this episode Throwback to Pandemic Times. Because I'm like, especially during the pandemic.
Well, I think it really forced us to speed up on that process.
Yeah,
all right, what if this is longer than 2 weeks?
Yeah. Which I always think back to like the first week where I'm like, oh my gosh, the big thing for me, I was like, I can't believe they're shutting Disneyland down for 2 weeks. Like, that's crazy. And school's just taking off for 2 weeks. Like, whoa, I couldn't believe 2 whole weeks. And then like a year later, I think I was just like sitting drunk laughing. And I was like, it's been a year.
Yeah. Oh God. And I remember loading all my work equipment into my car, being like, I'll be back in like a month at the latest.
Right. I know. Just crazy.
I will never see that building again. Like, that's like, it's the weirdest part about it all.
Oh, this one, we're super close. Driverless cars.
Let me ask you a question, because this has been a point of contention for me, and you are clearly more the daredevil than I am. This is like, oh, I'll have the first ticket to the moon.
Yes.
I don't know if I would ever want to get into a driverless car. I think my anxiety would just be through the roof. I
used to feel that way, but my dad has a Tesla.
Okay.
And we've definitely, like, it drives itself on the freeways. Like, we'll go from Riverside to Anaheim, which is about like a 45, 50-minute drive. And like, he doesn't drive. You have to be, he's there at least. So if something goes wrong, he can take over, or you have to keep your hands on the wheel. But there's times I'm just like, holy shit, the car just drove us here. This is so cool. Like,
see, I guess if someone's in the driver's seat, it's one thing. I feel like if there was an Uber that just pulled up and there was no one in the front seat, and I'm just supposed to sit in the back and hope that this car gets
They're testing that out. And I know right now they're just, well, the thing is that I trust a computer software program more than I do human error. Like, you are safer in a programmed system than a human.
All right. Because I also think in my brain, there's that part of me that's like, look, if every single car is self-driving, it's one thing. But like,
you will be dealing with, there will be
other people.
But then the cars are programmed to be able to react in time to safely do what they need to do to save you. Yeah. Like,
I've watched too many the evils of AI movies in my life. I think that's my problem.
You need to spend more time watching the Jetsons like I do, and you'll be totally for it. Yeah. That's why I'm like for all this shit.
I've seen Terminator and The Matrix. This is a slippery slope.
See, I've watched the Jetsons like far more. This is great. This is a beautiful little sketch I'm looking at. But weather control. People of mid-century seem to have a particular obsession with controlling the weather in the future. So whether they really thought that there would be technology or just a dream of it, hey, maybe that would solve global warming.
I mean, I feel like that goes hand in hand with the dome. If you're in the dome, I remember hearing that the original intention of Epcot Center was not to be a park, but was actually to be the neighborhood of the future, the city of the future.
Yeah, they were going to make a living community.
And I think that was part of it too, is that it would be under an enclosure where they could like control the wet. Like, it was supposed to be like, but you had to like, there was a lot of problems tied into it, a little bit of logistical and ethical problems with it, where it's like people are having to basically sign a lease, have to work for a specific company, like have to do this, that, and the other thing to be eligible to go. Yeah.
Where do I sign? I'm so there. If I could live in some, I don't know. I like to think that I'd love to live in like a not decided, but controlled.
Well, check out the sweet HOA that I'm in where my grass is
I know. I was like, but I don't want a normal like track home. It's boring. I want a space house. I want the house of the future where I press a button and my stove like pops up from the ground because it's, but then I would totally just commit to wearing my 1950s.
Yeah, you would go for the future retro aesthetic.
Oh, I like want to fully commit to that lifestyle. Obviously, we figured we'd have robot butlers, but we were predicted to have robot butlers. And I would like to know where mine is still.
Yeah. This is one of the great divides between you and I, because I'm like, I'm very content. I just like, I don't want the robot butlers. I don't want any of it. But again, I'm the person who also has a billion CDs and continues to buy more CDs and buy more DVDs when everyone's like, it's just streaming online. I'm like, but I need the physical thing to hold. You know how like in all those movies, there's the one dude who just refuses to like give in to the new technology.
Yes.
And in the types of movies that I watch, he's the hero of the film because, like, when everything goes wild, he's, like, not afraid to shoot a robot in the face with a shotgun. Like, that's my role in the future.
You're going to save everybody because you're like, I told you.
I knew the robots couldn't be trusted.
No, I'm telling you. Like, if you just spend as much time as I do watching cartoons. I'm trying to figure out if I'm reading this correctly because this thought of the future, tranquilizer warfare.
I guess so that there would be no killing, you would just be like,
okay, I gotta read this little blurb. During the Cold War, both the US and Soviet Union were working on different drug-induced methods of subduing enemy populations. And frankly, these quote-unquote happy victims and psychogas diplomats don't look so upset in the little sketch I'm looking. Bring on the happy gas.
so they were like, let's replace the bullets and, you know, like, and these chemical, like, We'll just use the Joker chemicals from the Batman comic.
It's not, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but it's not, I can understand how someone thought about it. It's not a terrible idea. We're like, what if instead of killing people, we just made them psychotically happy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think I would take, I don't know. See, this is the thing. You go back and forth because it's like, yeah, like I would much rather us not kill people. But then it's like, you think of like a movie like Get Out or whatever, where it's like, is this person conscious in the back of their head that they are like now a prisoner to these emotions? And it's like way worse of a torture than just being dead. Like,
maybe it's just like a temporary, just to be like, stop killing.
I thought you just meant like literally we loaded the guns with nothing but tranquilizer darts. And then it was just a game of like who, the last man standing has won that particular
The last man standing, he's sad. He's holding everyone else is happy, and he's
war can be settled by paintball, is what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, people were obsessed with like 24-hour daylight. There's a house that follows the sun.
That's definitely a 50s idea where it's like, no, you need the darkness. Like,
24-hour daylight. And it sounds like an episode of Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
I mean, you could just go move to like Alaska or
I was going to say
Norway.
Alaska gives you that.
I would not sleep. Like I need it to be dark when I sleep. Space hospitals. They predicted there would be, apparently in the 50s and 60s, they earnestly believed that space travel would become so common that people would be suffering from various illnesses, would simply zip up to a hospital in the sky for best treatment. I need this to happen.
Like, it's not just like, hey, it's a space hospital for if you're in outer space and you get sick, but it's like, no, it's a space hospital for when you're on Earth and you're not feeling good. We'll shoot you into space to the space hospital.
I was joking with a friend, actually. We were talking about, I think it was one, she's getting married in a year, so we're starting to do like wedding planning. And I have other friends who've gotten married. And I'm like, I was like, I just don't want like a traditional wedding that's like has the reception, the big party. Oh, it's so stressful and blah, blah, blah. And it was kind of going on that theme. And I was like, I don't know. I think I'm more like go somewhere crazy far and just get eloped and be casual. And then somehow like the moon came up and I was like, oh my God, she's laughing. She's like, I know you. By that time, moon travel, she's going to be like, yeah, I just want something low key and casual, like my wedding on the moon. And I was like, yes. I was like, can I get married on the moon? And so now that's my obsession.
That's the new goal.
That's a new goal.
You're going to just stay single until moon travel is so casual that you can have a wedding on the moon.
Yeah, and I'm like, sorry, you can't make it. I know destination weddings are such a bitch.
I think what we've landed on is that the Retro-Futurism was on the right track, but the wrong timeline.
Yeah.
Because it does look like you said, most of these, it's like they're either here or they're coming.
On their way. They're coming. Now we just need to bring the fashion back. But I still dress like 50s and 60s. So I'm going to live my happy little utopian retro-futuristic life.
Buckinghamshire, we have a glimpse of what the well-dressed man will wear for living in the atom age. If he doesn't wear it, he won't be living. It's made from a special type of chloride sheeting and is held together by high-frequency welding instead of stitches. Picture the domestic hearth of the future. The husband resting from his radioactive labor, and the little woman mending his trousers with a blow lamp.
You know, Gelsey, for the intro, you brought up the Jetsons and obviously the new George Jetson lineage. I'm having a weird brain fart on my side of things because I know that I watched the Jetsons a lot, but I'd be hard-pressed to tell you anything that ever happened on the show. Were you a Jetsons fan as a kid?
Yeah, it was very split between the Flintstones and Jetsons, like because it was whatever was on Boomerang.
Yeah.
They played,
I remember watching the Jetsons Meet the Flintstones movie a lot.
Yeah,
I feel like that's the most I've ever watched the Jetsons.
Yeah, I did recently rewatch season 1 of the Jetsons last year with a good friend. We were like, let's open a bottle of wine, and it's great. I was I couldn't wait. I was like, let's just keep going. And then of course I'm like, more wine, keep going, pour more wine, and I was, oh my gosh, I fucking love the Jetsons. So. Yeah.
The only other thing I know about the Jetsons, and I think I only know it because so many bands that I like have covered this song, is Eep-Bop or Ah Means I Love You.
Great song. It's a great song. It's Jet Screamin'.
It's a really catchy song. Like, it's a so legitimately catchy. Good song.
Oh, yeah.
We forget how many good songs actually came from those 60s and 70s cartoons.
Yeah, they actually like put some tender love and care into the song.
Yeah, because even when you think of like Josie and the Pussycats is a really catchy song. When you think of like even the Sid and Marty Krofft Saturday morning shows that they did, like HR Puffin stuff and you know, those types of weird drug induced shows, like those had really catchy songs in them as well. Like,
fun fact, this is it's a newer cartoon. I mean, for us, like childhood, but Rocko's Modern Life theme song, which is very catchy.
Right?
B-52s, yeah. And I'm a huge B-52s fan. Like, I've seen them in concert twice. I know every word to every song. I love the B-52s.
And the B-52s will tie this all around in a beautiful bow, because I recently learned this, or remembered this. The B-52s infamously covered the Flintstones theme song.
They're in the movie.
In the Flintstones movie. Do you remember what their band name is?
Yeah, BC-52s. I'm telling you, I'm a diehard B-52s fan, and they sing the Twitch. Yeah, Bedrock, Twitch. It's a funky town, and I'll lay around. It's a funky town called Bedrock. Yeah. Anyways, okay, fun.
Yeah, stay tuned because eventually we have to do a Hanna-Barbera cartoon episode of Before My Time.
Oh, it's gonna happen. There's just so many. I'm writing it down. Anyways, if you like our podcast, please give us a 5-star rating. I will send you all the good juju from it. And follow us on Instagram at BeforeMyTime_podcast. Say what's up, see what's coming here. Send a DM. I always am up for a good, hey, what's up? And I will say, hey, what's up back.
And if you want to really join into the conversation with other retro-loving fans, go and look for us on Facebook. Just search Before My Time. You'll find the Facebook group with the logo that you know and love. And you can join the conversation with other people who not only like the show, but also just like all that good retro shit.
Yay!
So that is another episode in the can.
Au revoir.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network. You're listening to the Geekscape Network.